You know, you mentioned Audrey Rose, and that's a movie that I would not, on the surface, picture him to have picked.
Yeah, it just sort of came and went as well. I mean, and I think his career sort of went on the rocks right after Sam publicly did Star, which was a high budget
Yeah,
Julianne,
very expensive. Fox, I think.
and it bombed. And I don't think the Hindenburg did very well either.
Yeah.
uh,
So,
with Percy Scott, and he had a very rocky career with that. I don't think he had any kind of runaway hits after Sound of Music and Sand Pebbles.
you know, I'll tell you something about the Hindenburg. I actually just saw that. Um, and I know from talking to production designer Joe Alves that when they went into production on Jaws, that Universal thought the Hindenburg was going to be the big movie that summer.
Yes, yes.
And I look, so you watch these things, and George C. Scott is captain. Have you seen the Hindenburg recently?
Yeah, I saw it about a year ago. Yeah, I pulled it out again, mostly just to look at oh, my brain's gone again. The guy who did the matte paintings for that, very famous guy. He did the
Albert
bird,
Whitlock.
Albert Whitlock. I mean, his work in that
Incredible.
film is like jaw-dropping.
Yeah. I mean, my thinking with it is like, I don't know if that's how it happened, if the film follows like the historical, like, was that blown up or did it
Well,
haven't?
it was that was one of the theories of like what happened to the Hindenburg, and I think the general feeling now is it was no, it was because they couldn't get the proper helium and they had flammable gas and there was a
Yeah.
spark, the technical screw. But for a lot of years, and probably still around, people think, yeah, it was sabotaged, which is the view the movie takes.
Yeah. Yeah. The movie says like some basically anti-Nazis essentially are going to
Yeah.
blow up the Reich's trophy to modern day aviation, which, by the way, the Hindenburg strikes me as a complete death. Blimps in general strike me as a death trap. I've never looked at a
But
blimp
it's
and be like, that's how
amazing.
I want to travel.
More than half the people on it survived. You
Really?
don't get out on an airplane. No, check it out. How many people actually got off of that when it crashed?
Huh.
Well, yeah, everyone's seen the photo of the fire and everything.
Yeah.
More than half, I'm sure it's more than half the people survived that crash.
And Led Zeppelin used it for an album cover.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's, again, Wise takes, he captures it in a very, very interesting way. I mean, you stick with that movie.
Yeah,
I know what's
you
going to happen at
do,
the end
but
of it, but I stick with it.
it's still in the old fashioned.
Yes, I know what you're
It's
saying.
slow. It's
Yeah.
slow. It builds, and then there's this, and then there's this, and it beautifully done, but not at the pace that people want these days. So,
Did you,
then again,
speaking of,
how speed up an airship?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is going to linger. Did you ever work or meet George C. Scott since he was in Hindenburg and we're talking about the film?
Interesting with George C. Scott. I ran into him. I'd worked with Bill Nunn, who I quite liked, and there was a short-lived series that was being shot in Vancouver, and I just dropped by the set to see Bill.
Uh,
And and he said, "Oh, it's cold. Let's go sit in the car." And we just sat in the car and had a conversation. And George C. Scott was also sitting in the car to get warm, but he was not part of our conversation. He just said, "George, do you mind if we join you?" And he's an old friend of mine. So we just carried on conversation. And the other time was, I think, about a year before his death. I flew on an airplane and out of first class, George C. Scott just sort of walked out. And I don't know where he was going, but he was very feeble, didn't even look like George C. Scott. He was had deteriorated so much, nobody recognized him. And then
uh,
when we got off the plane, he was in a wheelchair. He was coming here to do a film, which I think was one of his last films. But that's my entire scope of meeting George C. Scott, which was actually not meeting George C. Scott.
well, I mean, yes, I guess technically you're correct, but sitting in a car with him, it's interesting that you're in the car with him and he doesn't join the conversation. I mean, the thing about George C. Scott is he cast such an ornery presence and everything he did that you almost feel he's unapproachable socially.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when you
Yeah,
look at like,
yeah, when you sort of meet him and it was a night shoot and it was raining.
mhm.
Everyone was more or less miserable anyway and didn't want to talk. So
Yeah, I mean, like from Taps to Patton to Scrooge,
yeah,
Fire, pick your movie, Firestarter. He like was just he. You looked at him even when he tried to be like a sympathetic character, like in The Changeling. You still kind of got this impression, like I don't want to have lunch with that guy.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he could have. He may have been the nicest guy on the planet. I don't know, but it just kind of cuts that image.
I just rewatched Anatomy of a Murder, which was
Yeah.
I believe his second film, and he got an Oscar nomination. He's phenomenal in that film.
What? Well, obviously, yeah, too, and of course, there's the Kubrick film that everyone loves, the anti-war masterpiece. But what about what's that one where he was a doctor, like in the '70s? Was that Doctors or
Hospital. He's
Hospital?
fabulous in that. Yeah, he's fabulous in that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had some grit to him, you know.
Hi, this is Bill Daly. Please help me find a cure for NMOSD and with it possibly cancer. Visit the Guthrie Jackson Foundation website and donate today.